morning. I'm Toni, Director of the Hardwick Rare Book and Manuscript Library and Deputy University Librarian here at the University of Georgia. And on behalf of the Hardwick Library and the University Libraries, we welcome you to the 12th Annual Georgia Writers Hall of Fame ceremony. Microphone turned on. Good morning. I'm Toby Graham, director of the. So we're glad to have you all here. It's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate Georgia writers and something we look forward to all year. And today we celebrate the lives and the works of Judson Mitcham and Toni Cade Bambara. They're among the 45 writers inducted since the University of Georgia Libraries established the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame in the year 2000. The Hardwick Library, which administers the hall, is the leading rare book and manuscript library on Georgia history and culture. It includes the Georgiana collection, which is the largest, most comprehensive collection of books written by Georgians about Georgia. It includes millions of original documents, including papers related to literary figures such as Margaret Mitchell, Erskine Caldwell, Byron Herbert Reese, Cora Harris, Lillian Smith, Calder Willingham, Harry Crews, Francis Mays, Judith Ortiz Cofer, Philip Lee Williams, and others. Last year we had a more general celebration in this space for all of our previous, our prior inductees into the hall. So this is actually Toni Cade Bambara and Judson Mitcham will be the first inductees to be brought into the Hall of Fame since we moved into this this new building, the Russell Special Collections building. I need to express our deep gratitude to George and Nancy Montgomery, whose love of literature, whose philanthropic spirit led them to create a Georgia Writers Hall of Fame endowment that enables us to recognize the literary talent of Georgians for years to come. I'd like to thank Dr. Jerry Moorhead, the president of the University of Georgia, Dr. Libby Morris, the interim provost, and Hugh Rupersberg, who's here with us today, the interim vice provost, for their support of the University of Georgia Libraries and its mission. I also want to recognize Dr. William Gray Potter, the university librarian and associate provost here at the University of Georgia, who has skillfully guided the UGA libraries for approaching 25 years. And he's done so with a combination of vision and creativity and judgment. His record of achievement during his time at the University of Georgia is remarkable, and when he retires in August, he will be certainly sorely missed by all of us at the libraries and the University of Georgia. I want to thank our Board of Visitors members who are here today, and if you're a member of the Board of Visitors of the University of Georgia Libraries, if you could just please stand so that we could recognize you. Our Board of Visitors is really just, they're a wonderful group of friends who help the libraries, and their signature accomplishment is this building and all that they've done to help make this possible, so we appreciate your attendance. I'd like to thank the following UGA Library staff for their work on behalf of the Writers Hall. Skip Hewlett, who developed the writers exhibit that we hope you will enjoy after the session today. Leandra Nessel, Mary Ellen Brooks, Chantel Dunham, Debbie Dove, Krista Cliver, Jean Cleveland, and Mary Linneman. The Georgia Writers Hall of Fame relies on a distinguished panel of judges to determine which authors are inducted. And I'll take a moment to recognize them, so please stand as I call your name. Mary Adams. Thank you, Mrs. Adams, for your continued participation. Mrs. Adams has been part of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame since its inception, and we appreciate you, all that you've done for us. Lisa Baer. Lisa is the sort of kind of new director of the University of Georgia Press. It's her second year as a judge for the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame. So thank you, Lisa. Judith Ortiz-Kofer, who's not with us, but who is one of our inductees into the Writers Hall of Fame. Dr. Stephen Corey. Stephen is he heads the Georgia Review. Peggy Gallus, is Peggy with us? Peggy's a wonderful friend of the libraries and the Review and the press. Melissa Fay Green is not with us. She was with us last night. She is one of our wonderful Georgia writers and an inductee into the Hall of Fame. Julie Hunt. Julie, thank you. Just a great friend to the library. Dr. John Insco, the history department here at the University of Georgia and the New Georgia Encyclopedia. Shell Knox. Dr. John Lowe. Dr. Lowe, we're glad to have you. This is your first year as a judge, and it's just wonderful to have you on the board. Bill Potter is also on the board. Dr. Hugh Rupersberg, thank you. Natasha Trethaway, the Poet Laureate of the United States, is also one of our judges. She was unable to be here, and she is an inductee into the Writers Hall. Lisa White, and Lisa is, I believe, a friend to all good causes in Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. Philip Lee Williams, who is one of our inductees into the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame and will participate in the program today. Neely Young, who is the luminary behind Georgia Trend magazine, and Jamil Zinaldine. And Jamil is the president of the Georgia Humanities Council and does such a wonderful job with that. So thank you. And finally, and most importantly, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Judson Mitcham and Jean Mitcham and all of your family who are here to celebrate with you here today. We'd like to welcome and recognize the family of Toni, Cade, Bambara, particularly Karma Bambara Smith, her husband Ronald, their children Zoe, Preston, and Jaden, and we're so glad that you all are here to represent your mother, Karma, today. Okay, so with that, we have an introductory video to our program today. So Chris, if you'll cue that up for us.
Georgia, a rich and diverse landscape. From the blue midst of the ancient Appalachians, where born are the cold sparkling waters which rush down from the highlands and thread the fertile rolling green Piedmont hills, drifting across the sandy pine flatlands to the mysterious swamplands and glittering deltas and golden marshes, which embrace our moss-draped and sun-baked islands, where Georgia meets the sea. This grand southern setting has inspired and informed many diverse historic forces that have influenced and created the Georgia, the South, the nation, and indeed the world that we know today. Through periods of exploration and settlement, cultivation and industrialization, wars and peace, depressions and boom times, Georgia has given birth to many unique and influential figures in business, government, science, education, and of course, the arts. Georgia has arguably produced the greatest breadth of important and distinctive voices to come from the South, defining the region for those who knew it well and for those who did not, through comedy and tragedy, fiction and nonfiction, poetry and prose, speeches and songs, folk tales and screenplays. How would the South's and America's heart and soul be different today without the dark humor of Flannery O'Connor, or the wistful sentiment of the song Moon River, or a U.S. President's memoir of growing up on a rural Georgia farm, or the epic Civil War tale of a Southern woman named Scarlett, or a minister's clarion call for freedom from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Recognizing a need to preserve, celebrate, and honor Georgia's literary legacy, the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame was created to recognize Georgia writers, past and present, whose work reflects the character of the state, its land, and its people. The Hall of Fame was established in 2000 as part of the Hargrett Rare Book and Manuscript Library to honor Georgia writers and to introduce and invite the public to access the library's rich collections for research into Georgia literature and cultural history. Here you find a comprehensive collection of materials created by some of Georgia's most significant writers, original papers, letters, research materials, manuscripts, and various editions of their work, preserving the state's literary legacy for many generations to come. To be eligible for nomination, a writer must have been either a native of Georgia or have produced a significant work while living in Georgia. The Board of Judges meet yearly to review nominations. An annual public ceremony at the Russell Special Collections Libraries celebrates each year's inductees in conjunction with an exhibit of rare books and literary manuscripts. The Hargrett Library's vast collection of important materials on Georgia, millions of pages of historic manuscripts, photos, maps, broadsides, first and foreign editions, is protected, preserved, and organized by the people of Georgia and for the people of Georgia, all open to the visiting public at the Richard B. Russell Building Special Collections Library. The work of the Hall of Fame helps to highlight and to promote the critical works of these authors, preserving them for the future. Please join us in celebrating Georgia's rich and diverse and important writers and literary treasures.
Thank you. Y'all may have noticed or recognized the voice. That was another Georgia Writers Hall of Fame inductee, Terry Cade. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Barbara McGaskill, Associate Professor of English at the University of Georgia and co-director of the Civil Rights Digital Library, who will induct Toni, Cade, Bambara into the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame. Dr. McGaskill.
I'm a little shorter, so I'm going to do that. Toni Cade Bambara birthed herself as a writer when America had caught fire, literally and figuratively. For many African Americans like her, the cultural nationalism of the late 60s and early 70s, what scholars have come to call the Black arts movement, ignited a great awakening of mind and spirit. Bell bottoms, flower power, summers of love, 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 and the peace messages of folk musicians and civil rights marchers collided with the nation admitting to bitter realities about itself, to the following gritty truths that would not and could not make nice or share the playground sweetly. The incursion of cheap, ubiquitous narcotics into inner city neighborhoods, the exodus of inner city neighbors, local historians, and culture bearers to both suburban flight and urban renewal, war, rumors of war, and draft boards that possessed an evil genius for sussing out the poor and people of color in numbers disproportionate to their actual populations, schools that undereducated, miseducated, and or just plain failed to educate their charges. And finally, those sad familiars, poverty, hunger, ignorance, violence, hopelessness. Enter Toni Cade Bambara, born in Harlem, educated at Queens College as well as in France, Italy, and England, and teaching and writing during the 70s and 80s at Spelman College, Emory University, and Atlanta University. She dreamed beyond tight spaces and assumed the name of a nation, the Bambara peoples of present-day Mali, Burkina Faso, and Senegal, from a signature she found in a book that belonged to her great-grandmother. As we of the Afro-Protestant churches are skilled at recognizing by renaming herself, she claimed herself as both a witness and a testimony. TCB, as her admirers call her, commandingly jazzes things up. In her creative works, films, and activist writings, Black life, Black love, Black music, Black speech, and Black liberation announce themselves and thrive. In her fiction, long and short, African-American vernacular culture, rooted in the rural South's homespun settings and keloid-scarred landscapes, confidently flashes city swag as it scats across urban boulevards of steel and asphalt and concrete. Her initials, TCB, denote three elements: teaching, community activism, and building bridges and dialogues among and between opponents. These have elevated her career and art. They have shaped her legacy, and they have brought her and us to her induction today in the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame. The Black Woman, edited by Toni, Cade, Bambara and setting bookshelves ablaze in 1970, stands as one of the earliest anthologies of American literature, consisting cover to cover of submissions by women of African descent. Dog-eared, broken-spined, thumb-worn, our paperback copies of The Black Woman exposed how Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique and Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex could not fully make sense of the braided lives of Black women. Like second-wave feminist anthologies, such as Gloria Anzaldua's This Bridge Called My Back, to which Toni Cade contributed the introduction, and Alice Walker's stories in You Can't Keep a Good Woman Down, this volume, The Black Woman, satisfied a taste among women like me for making visible what Patricia Hill Collins, Patricia Bell Scott, Beverly Guy Sheftall, and other Black feminists have described as the intersectionalities of our lived experiences. The individual contributions to the Black women offer us a collective, contemporary take on how Black and woman were simultaneous rather than mutually exclusive ideas, intertwined with race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and other subjectivities. It mattered to us as Black women that our lives differed from those of white women, white men, Black men, and other Americans, and the Black woman celebrated these differences rather than declaring them as liabilities. The contributors to The Black Woman challenged public perceptions that dichotomized us either as public enemy number ones, as angry, shrill, dangerous ghetto thugs, or as retrofitted mammies who served with a smile, sacrificing our best time and energies in the name of pleasing white people while neglecting our own families and communities. The Black Woman, followed by her second anthology, Tales and Stories for Black Folk, shoved aside such buckwheats and Jemimas. Between, over, under, and through such binaries, this book made space for Black women like me just to be. Fixing Toni Cade Bambara's work in the American literary canon are her two collections of short stories, Gorilla My Love and The Seabirds Are Still Alive, and her novel, The Salt Eaters, winner of the American Book Award. The blues or jazz instrument, a guitar, a piano, a saxophone, often constructs an upbeat, danceable tune offset by downbeat lyrics that pine away for a man, a woman, a new man, a new woman, my job today, your party tomorrow, the last month's rent from empty pockets, the next day's train to a second chance where money will fall like manna from the clouds and love and lightning will strike again. The phrase "good morning heartache," as Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and Diana Ross have sung, exemplifies such a synthesis of hope and despair. In Toni Cade's prose, we see examples of this emotional paradox, yet never at the expense of meanings that are clear, direct, and complicated. Her fictions explore what she called the kitchen tradition, or the communal wisdom and healing powers generated by ordinary, everyday Black elders, by kids named Flyboy, Fat Butt, Sugar, and Squeaky, by everyone, as she writes in her short story, The Lesson, quote, old and stupid or young and foolish, end quote. Airing each other's dirty laundry, whispering behind each other's back like dogs, smart-mouthing, back-talking, acting tenderly and mercifully too. Toni Cade's characters are also always in conversation with the mainstream society that is indifferent to the physical and psychological wreckage it has dumped on them. Her fiction also stands among the finest examples of what the historian Waldo E. Martin has called Black cultural politics, or the understanding among African Americans, as announced in W.E.B. Du Bois' masterpiece, Souls of Black Folk, that art and artistic production rest at the center of social change, that creative expression is effective in dismantling racialized and gendered systems of oppression, and it is essential for demanding that Americans actualize the democracy we claim to sustain. As Toni Morrison writes in the preface to Deep Sightings and Rescue Missions, Toni Cade Bambara's unpublished writings, quote, there was no division in her mind between optimism and ruthless vigilance, between aesthetic obligation and the aesthetics of obligation. She always knew what her work was for. Any hint that art was over there and politics over here would break her up into tears of laughter or elicit a look so withering it made silence the only intelligent response. Bambara applied this theory of art as activism to documentary film as well. Her first award-winning effort, The Bombing of Osage Avenue, investigates the confrontation between a militarized police force and a nationalist group called MOVE, which ended on May 13, 1985, with the incineration of a city neighborhood and the massacre of 11 African-American adults and children. Her script for the documentary on W.E.B. Du Bois, the documentary on W.E.B. Du Bois, A Biography in 4 Voices, anticipated a new wave of civil rights film that focuses on messy internal tensions and that finds value in thinking about the flaws and inconsistencies in heroic figures like Du Bois. Toni Cade Bambara's sorrow song of a beautiful and brutal Atlanta during the year of the child murders, her posthumously published 1999 novel, Those Bones Are Not My Child, edited by Toni Morrison, was her last. Yet perhaps it would be, to quote the late Lucille Clifton's poem, The 38th Year, merely white and Western to think of Toni Cade Bambara's art as undone, her legacy as unfulfilled. She had initiated her career with a book, The Black Woman, that introduced many readers to the voices of Alice Walker, Nikki Giovanni, Audre Lorde, and Paul Marshall, among others, who are now titans of American literature and staples in anthologies and courses on the subject. Similarly, her honest and fearless assessments of internal divisions within African-American communities opened the door for another Georgia-born writer, Tiare Jones, whose debut novel, Leaving Atlanta, like Toni Cade Bambara's Gorilla My Love, posits humor and the insights of a womanish young protagonist as antidotes against public violence and private pain. Bambara paved the way for Georgia native Shay Youngblood, who, like the Salt Eaters Black community of Claiborne, Georgia, sets her Big Mama stories in the fictional world within a world of a Columbus, Georgia housing project. Youngblood, in fact, was a member of the Pamoja, or Unity Workshop, that Bambara formed and facilitated when Spelman College, where she was working, rejected her petition to teach a class on African American women writers. I find that just so, wow. But Spelman's made up for that. Finally, Toni Cade Bambara certainly has peered over the shoulders of Carolina's Randall Keenan, whose attunement to the uncanny and to magic realist images rhyme with her own interest in Eastern religions and mythic archetypes. Ancestor, foremother, spirit guide, Toni Cade Bambara, T period, C period, B period. We honor you. We greet you. You are welcome. We have opened the circle, inviting you to sit at our table and share a plate of our Georgia collards, a ladleful of our steaming pot liquor. Sop it up with a piece of sweet cornbread, you know, the kind that tastes like cake, dripping, of course, with chunky parallelogram pats of real butter. You who found Atlanta a city, quote, rich in metaphysical possibilities, end quote, may be tickled this morning to know that you are the 10th number, the number of creation and initiation, the number of vision and leadership. You are the 10th among Black writers who have entered this hall. W.E.B. Du Bois, Georgia Douglas Johnson, Jean Toomer, Walter White, Martin Luther King Jr., John Oliver Killens, Raymond Andrews, Alice Walker, Natasha Trethewey, now you. And look to the horizon, more are coming. They have yet to name their names and frame their stories. No hurry, we will wait alongside you. No need to call them over, they'll arrive in good time. As you once ran back to us, caught your breath and said, it burns your energy up to holler.
This will be real short. If anybody knows me, they know I'm, plus just hearing all that, a little overwhelming. Stop it. I'm definitely the opposite of my mother when it comes to this. I'm very quiet, very in the background. And as you know her, that definitely was not her. I just wanted to say thank you. Because of course, we talk about my mother a lot. And of course, she's wonderful, beyond words, but it's nice to hear that she had that effect on so many other people. So thank you, that was wonderful. And just thank you for the recognition. Thank you for the exhibit, absolutely beautiful. So that's it.
Thank you. Joining us today to induct Judson Mitcham is Philip Lee Williams, who himself was inducted into the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame in 2010. So, Phil, could you join us, please?
Good morning. I consider it one of the great honors of my career as a writer to have the chance to introduce the newest living member of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame. As I'm sure everyone here knows, Judson Mitcham isn't just a great poet and novelist. He's poet laureate of the state of Georgia, but he is so much more. New inductees into the hall get to serve for a limited term as judges, and so it was my pleasure to be on the panel last year that elected Judson. And I can tell you there was almost no discussion. In fact, it seemed to me there was a sense of what were we thinking in trying to explain why he wasn't already a member. I won't try to introduce the friends and family present with Judson. He'll have the pleasure of doing that when he steps up here in a few moments, something that has become a tradition for this event. But I do want to say that every living member of this esteemed body that I know is prouder to be a part of it today because Judson Mitcham is a member. I tried to remember the first time I met Judson, and I think it was before 1985, back when we were still young enough to talk about our jump shots and not be lying about it. Judson grew up only a few miles from me in Monroe, and so the lens through which we saw the world must have been very similar. I had heard he was an up-and-coming poet, and I knew he had published a well-received chapbook called Notes for a Prayer in June in 1986. But it was only when I read his collection of poems Somewhere in Ecclesiastes, which came out from the University of Missouri Press in 1991, I realized that Judson Mitcham was already a major figure in Southern letters. How a woman or a man gets to a point of eminence as a creative writer is always something of a mystery. For Judson Mitcham, that story began in Monroe, but it came through Athens, Georgia, as it did for so many others. For he came to this place as a fine student, and in almost record time earned undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees in psychology. If anyone was primed for grad school, he was, graduating Phi Beta Kappa as an undergraduate in 1969, before earning his other degrees here in 1971 and 1974, respectively. His career track took him on an unusual and path-breaking journey. In 1974, he became an assistant professor of psychology at historically black Fort Valley State College, and he would stay there until 2004, serving as head of his department for an amazing 17 years in a row. In all his years as a professor, thousands of students had life-changing experiences with a man who is also an exceptional teacher. But literature was never far from his mind as he spent those good years as a professor and as a family man. Along the way, he also taught English and creative writing at Emory University and Georgia College and State University, as well as here at the University of Georgia. Starting in 2002, he became a senior lecturer in English at Mercer University in Macon, and last spring he was named the Farrell A. Sams Jr. Distinguished Chair of English and Writer-in-Residence there. In 2012, he became Poet Laureate of the state of Georgia. And just to remind you what an honor this is, Georgia is now number 8 in population in the entire United States, with around 10 million citizens. And as most of you learned in elementary school, Georgia is physically the largest state east of the Mississippi River. It is an important post, and the state of Georgia is honored by having Judson Mitcham Poet Laureate. In addition to his poetry, which also includes the volume This April Day and A Little Salvation, Poems Old and New, Judson is also a spectacularly gifted novelist. I remember reading his first novel, The Sweet Everlasting, about the time I read Somewhere in Ecclesiastes for maybe the third time, and my reaction was simple: this isn't fair. It isn't fair that one person could have this much talent in 2 different literary fields. Others recognized his excellence too, since The Sweet Everlasting won the Townsend Prize for Fiction, the most coveted prize for an individual book in Georgia. And when his second novel, Sabbath Creek, came out in 2004, he had to go and do it again. So he is the only 2-time winner of the Townsend Prize. But I'm here to tell you something. He got those prizes the old-fashioned way. He earned them. Along the way, he also earned a Pushcart Prize and the Devens Award, and he was named Georgia Author of the Year twice in poetry and in fiction. And he won a National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellowship, too. He has done readings and workshops in many cities, and his poems have been in numerous textbooks and anthologies. Dozens of Judson Mitcham's poems have graced America's best literary journals over the years, among them the Great Georgia Review. And I must point out with a lot of pride that both of Judson Judson's novels and his latest collection of poetry came out from our own University of Georgia Press. In an interview, Judson said something that gets to the heart of who he is as a writer. He said, "Flannery O'Connor says that the writer can choose about anything he likes, but he cannot choose what he makes live. My work is set in the South because that's what comes alive for me when I try to write." He has also brought to his art a deep sense of our land's troubled history, but with an abiding sense of compassion for persons, places, and even things. And while psychology might not have directly helped Judson as a poet, literature and psychology both benefited by that intersection between science and art that he embodies so well. Judson also said something else I love. He said, "Poets are involved with what language can discover. We bring our experiences and observations and emotions and thoughts to language, which is primary. It's by attending closely to language that we discover what can be said as poetry." The beauty and intensity that this man has brought to language have been a permanent gift to all humankind. That is why it is a great honor to introduce Judson Mitcham as a new member of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you, Phil. When I began to write a novel, sort of stumbled into the writing of a novel. I didn't really know I was going to do it. One of the books that I took as a model was The Heart of a Distant Forest, the Townsend Prize winning book by Philip Lee Williams. Today I feel a bit like William Faulkner, not the Faulkner who rose in Stockholm to make his grand pronouncements on the enduring and prevailing of the human race, but the Faulkner who returned to Oxford in uniform after the Great War, who told stories of piloting planes he never flew in, who wore wings he did not earn, who sported a walking stick and a fake limp, and who eventually acquired the nickname of Count No Count. The Faulkner who returned home an imposter. I have labored all my adult life to write as well as I can, but I cannot stand here in the presence of Flannery O'Connor and W.E.B. Du Bois without thinking I should be in a costume of some kind, as the Count was, trying to disguise who I really am. "Don't worry," you should say to me. "No one is about to confuse you with them." I do know that, but there is a real sense involving a necessary understanding in which this place must remain an uneasy home, a hard place to belong. And yet there is also a very real sense in which I do belong here, in this place, this town and university, so layered and textured with personal history and shot through with a history far beyond the personal, that they are overdetermined, one might say, burdened with so many meanings. I cannot speak of them easily or perhaps even accurately. But here are some of those layers and textures. My grandfather died on this campus in 1932. He was a carpenter involved in the building of dormitories when he suffered a stroke. And so my father had to quit the 9th grade and go to work. Some 25 or so years later, while employed in the office of a cotton mill in Monroe, my father enrolled in night school at this university, drove here in the evenings for 5 years, and graduated with honors. It was one of the great joys of his life. By this, I do not mean the achievement, though that did matter, but the act of coming here to this campus, these grounds, these classrooms, the act of listening and reading, the privilege of entering the world, conversation. He approached all this with a kind of wonder. He appeared to relish the work. One evening, he and I came to Athens to check his grades, posted on the door of the administration building, which was then Adderhold Hall, just past the arches. I can see us, and it's just Daddy and me, but in truth, the whole family may have come. After we saw his A+, we strolled toward the library up into the lush and cool green shadow of North Campus. My sister, Linda, my son, Zach, my daughter-in-law, Jana, my daughter, Anna, my son-in-law, Jeff, my sister-in-law, Karen, all have degrees from this university. And here's another layer for the experience of this place. When I was in the 6th grade in Monroe Elementary, not much more than a half hour from here, a girl transferred from Walker Park, a school out in the county, walked into Mrs. Thompson's basement classroom wearing a white dress with blue polka dots. She told me yesterday she hated that dress. I didn't know that. A year later in the 7th grade, I had a vivid dream about her, and the next day she came to school with a different haircut. The combination of that dream and something about the way her hair revealed her eyes threw me into one of those only in adolescence trances, but this one stayed with me. It's really stayed with me all my life. I looked at her all that day, trying not to let her see what I was doing, but how do you suppose that went? 5 years later, in the summer of 1965, she went out with me. The next summer, Jean and I came to the University of Georgia together. The university experience was our experience. Shared day to day. We laughed and cried at the same things. We still do. A few weeks before our son was born, in 1972 at Athens General, I tried to write a poem for her. Some lines about how those days were the last ones that she and I would be together as just the two of us. It made her sad, but I didn't mean for it to be sad. I didn't know what I meant it to be. But now I know that I wrote it to hold those moments as they vanished. And yet when Zach was born, the world turned like a sonnet, reached back and recast what had come before. We had lived with an absence, a specific absence, without knowing it, and now we were together in a living transcendence. The world had taken a leap. It had been made new, and this happened again with a shocking joy when Anna was born. There's your poetry. If I had never written a single poem, if I'd never sat down a word toward a novel, my life would still have been given the deep surprise and the difficult balance of a work of art because of the intelligence and humor and character of the woman I married and because of the full heart of our family, which now includes the miracle presences that are our grandchildren, Addie, Noah, and Isabel. Flannery O'Connor said that the writer's task is to find that peculiar crossroads where time and place and eternity somehow meet. Surely that peculiar crossroads, for me, is not far from here. Yeats says, we are in love, and love what vanishes. Usually when we are starting out as writers, we are burdened with the abstract. We want to write about God or love or truth or justice, and we soon find that these subjects will not come alive unless we are willing to forget them for a while and take a look around us. Take a look at what O'Connor calls the concrete details of life that make actual the mystery of our position on earth. We are made out of dust, she says, and if you scorn getting yourself dusty, then you shouldn't try to write fiction. It's not grand enough for you. We're in love, and love what vanishes. We need to look around. So I look around, and I wonder, where's Barnett's newsstand? On Highway 78, where's Posse's? Where's the giant screen of the drive-in theater on the other side of the highway? Where, oh where, is Allen's? Where is Woodruff Hall?
the only basketball arena in the SEC in which the weather was a factor. Where's that old snack shack? Where's Betty's truck stop? Where's the YMCA building that was not far from where I'm standing, where my brother Ben and I played basketball? What happened to that hardwood court that I hit face down when I was 12 years old and upon which I bled profusely from my nose until Mike Castranis reached down with a towel and helped me up? Where is Coach Mike? And where has Dean Tate gone? Well, he has gone the way of the panty raid. Events at which he would show up and walk through the crowd of testosterone-poisoned boys and demand, "Let me see your ID." And then he'd take it from you and put it in his pocket. Where's T.K. Hardy's in the fifth quarter and the Swamp Guinea and the B&L Warehouse, and where's the old Black Dog? Where is the version of Memorial Hall in which we smoked and played cards over grilled cheeses and greasy fries and listened to the Four Tops singing Sugar Pie Honey Bunch and Bernadette? Where's that old A&A bakery on Lumpkin? Where's Toni's? Where's Gigi's? Where's the train trestle that ran behind the stadium? And on fall afternoons as cool as a peeled apple, where is that matchless voice, that hard economy of words, that driving and clipped rhythm and growl of Larry Munson? The very breath of the charged moment, exactly what the poet wants. Where has all this gone? We are in love, and love what vanishes. I left this place where I was brought up and went to another where I was brought up again. I went to teach psychology at Fort Valley State College, the university system's oldest historically black college. I was 26 years old. I taught there for 30 years, and it was there that I came to understand the truth of the words spoken by Faulkner's character, who says, "The past is never past. The past is never dead. It's not even past." And so now when I look in this direction toward my home, I can't help seeing also the face of Lemuel Penn, who was wearing his country's uniform when he was shot to death out here on the Broad River Bridge. I can't help seeing the 4 young people lynched at Moore's Ford, not 5 miles from my grandfather's dairy farm. Those deaths and countless other cruelties, part of the centuries-long tragedy that grew from our entire nation's color derangement, are still alive now, right now. That tragedy is still alive because the present is like a page of a novel where now and yesterday exist together, the backstory within the moment, a living part of it, and foreshadowing what is to come. We keep on trying to put down the book, but that is an act of cowardice and indecency. We keep on trying to act like we have read the book when we have not. We keep on trying to cheat our way through history. I wish I could read what Toni Cade Bambara would have written about this moment in our history. I presume to speak about her only because I knew her slightly. Having spent 2 days with her when my colleague Bill Richard and I brought her to Fort Valley State College to give a reading, Bill and I saw right away that in her presence we were out of our depth, as we often were in that community. I did come to realize with the passing years that I had moved so blithely within that culture of rich and vibrant subtext, where the surface said so much about what was underneath, that I must have been viewed as, if not a child, a rather simple person. Indeed, there were those who took care of me, older black faculty members who befriended me, looked out for me, taught me, set me straight, and nurtured me. I'm talking about Laverne Ford and Clyde Harvey, among others. They too are gone. It is not for me to affirm or authenticate the vision of Toni Cade Bambara. I have no right to do so. I have no place to stand. But I can bear direct witness to this, her unrelenting drive for clarity and liberating truth, and her personal kindness. I have experienced in person and on the page the transformation worked by her voice, this woman who saw in her own writing a tremendous capacity for laughter and a tremendous capacity for rage, I witnessed her intense focus on the students and their delight in reading what she called her straight-up fiction. I felt privileged to be in her presence. I am privileged to enter this hall in her company. I want to end by saying a few words about another writer we brought to Fort Valley that same winter in a separate time, the novelist John Gardner, who was then still embroiled in a controversy he had generated over what he called moral fiction. Gardner died in a motorcycle accident not long after his visit. The central story in his last collection is entitled Redemption. It is a story about a boy who was partly at fault in the accidental death of his younger brother. The story describes the boy's attempt to reconcile himself to the world after his brother's death. In On Moral Fiction, Gardner said that our work should try to be equal to our difficult lives. Your writing should try to save your life, he said, and the lives of others. We are so steeped in our irony, our coolness, our distance, our meta-phenomena, and so terrified of choking up in public that this makes us smile and smirk and condescend. What was he thinking, we want to say? What planet was he living on? The answer, of course, is that he was living on the planet where he himself had been the older brother, though only 12, driving the tractor that had run out of gas while pulling the cultipacker upon which his younger brother Gilbert had been riding. When the tractor ran out of gas, it jerked to a stop, and Gilbert fell under the wheels of the cultipacker. True art, John Gardner said, does not sneer or giggle in the face of death. It invents prayers and weapons. I have my own reasons for taking those words to heart. Words that have guided my writing life and brought me here through some act of grace to be included in this hall of prayers and weapons. Well, that is surely what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Judson, and thank you, Karma and Barbara and Phil. It's been a remarkable, memorable morning. And just in closing, I want to make just a few remarks and reminders. As has been said, Skip has put together an exhibition on the life and works of Toni, Cade, Bambara, and Judson Mitcham, and so we hope that you will go and spend some time there and enjoy that exhibit. Appreciate that. Also, the other galleries that we have here for the Hargret Library, for the Richard B. Russell Library for Political Research and Studies, and our Walter J. Brown Media Archive and Peabody Awards Collection, those galleries are open, and we'll have folks there who can help to interpret those exhibits for you. There's also a book sale out there that you can enjoy, and I would also direct you to the Georgia Review. Last year developed a dedicated issue on the writers of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame, an award-winning issue, and that is available out here as well. The library is pleased that today's event could be part of the Spotlight on the Arts Week, the festival here at the University of Georgia, and there are more than 60 different events that are going on across campus. And you can find out more about those at arts.uga.edu. We also have some information on that on the way out, where you can see all the other events that are happening here that you can enjoy while you're here. And I want to thank all of you for being here, for your support of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame, and let's give one more round of applause for Judson Mitcham and for the memory of Toni, Cade, Bambara.